So I'm going to be reading parts of Chapter 11, Castle Rock, from The Lord of the Flies, and I'm only going to read I'm going to read certain parts out of the chapter just because it is a long chapter and I want to fit it all into 10 minutes. So here it goes. That's them, said Piggy. They blinded me. See? That's Jack. You call an assembly, Ralph. We've got to decide what to do. An assembly? For only us? It's all we got. Sam, let me hold on to you. They went toward the platform. Blow the conch, said Piggy. Blow it as loud as you can. The forest re-echoed, and the birds lifted, crying out of all the tree-tops, as on the first morning ages ago. Both ways the beach was deserted. Some little uns came from the shelters. Ralph sat down on the polished trunk of the trees, and the others stood before him. He nodded, and Sam sat down to the right. Ralph pushed the conch into Piggy's hands. He held the shining thing carefully and blinked at Ralph. Go on, then. I just, I take the conch and I wanted to say, I can't see no more, and I want my glasses back. Awful thing has been done on this island, and I voted for you for the chief. He's the only one who ever got anything done. So now you speak, Ralph, and tell us what, or else. Piggy broke off, sniveling. Ralph took back the conch and sat down. Just an ordinary fire. You think we could do that, wouldn't you? Just a smoke signal so that we can be rescued. Are we savages or what? Only now there's no signal going up. Ships may be passing. Do you remember how we went and we hunted and the fire went out and the ship passed by and they all think that it's the best chief? Then there it was. There it was. That's his fault too. If it hadn't been for him, it would have never happened. Now Piggy can't see, and now they came and they're stealing. Ralph's voice ran up. At night in the darkness and stole our fire? They stole it. We have been given them fire if they'd asked, but they stole it, and the signal's out and we can't ever be rescued. Don't you see what I mean? We'd have been given them the fire for ourselves, but only they stole it. So this goes on, this conversation about the fire and going back and forth about how they aren't going to be rescued because of that decision to steal the fire. Okay. I'm going to him with the conch in his hands. I'm going to hold it out. Look, I'm going to say that you're stronger, and I'm going and you have asthma. You can see. I'm going to say that with both eyes. But I don't ask for my glasses back, not as a favor. I don't ask you to be a sport. I say, not because you're strong, but because that's what's right. Give me my glasses. I'm going to say, you got to. Piggy ended, flushing and trembling. He pushed the conch quickly into Ralph's hands and thought in a hurry to rid of it, and wiped his tears from his eyes. The green light was gentle about them, and the conch lay at Ralph's feet, fragile and white. A single drop of water then had escaped Piggy's fingers, now flashing on the delicate curve like a star. At last Ralph sat up straight and drew back his hair. All right. I mean, you can try if you like. We'll go with you. He'll be painted, said Sam timidly. You know how he'll be. So this is where they then decide to go approach the other boys who stole the fire and the glasses from Piggy and Ralph. So they sat off along the beach in, in formation. Ralph went first, limping a little, his spear carried over one shoulder. He saw things partially, through the trembling of the heat haze over the flashing sands, and on his long hair and, injuries. Behind him came the twins, worried now for a while, but full of unquenchable vitality. They said a little, but trailed the butts of their wooden spears, for Piggy had found that, by looking down the shield, that his tired sight from the sun, he could see that these moving along the sand. He walked between the trailing butts. Therefore the conch held carefully between his two hands. The boys made the compact little group and moved over the beach. He stood halfway along the neck and gazed at the savage intently. Freed by the paint that they had painted on their faces and their hair back were more comfortable than he was. Ralph made a resolution to tie his own back for afterwards. Indeed, he felt like telling them to wait and doing it there and then, but it was impossible. The savages snickered, and a bit one gestured at Ralph with a spear. High above, Roger took his hands off the lever and leaned out to see what was going on. The boys on the neck stood in the pool of their own shadow, diminished as shaggy heads. Piggy crouched, his back shapeless as a sack. I'm calling an assembly. Silence. Roger took out a stone and flung it between the twins, aiming to miss. They stared at Sam, only just to keep his footing. Some source of power began to pulse in Roger's body. Ralph spoke again loudly. I'm calling an assembly. He ran his eyes over them. Where's Jack? The group of boys stirred and consulted, and a painted face spoke with the voice of Robert. He's hunting, and he said we weren't to let you in. I've come to see about the fire, said Ralph, and about Piggy's specs. The group in front of him shifted in laughter and shivered outward from among them. Light excited their laughter and went echoing among the tall rocks. A voice spoke from behind Ralph. What do you want? The twins made a bolt past Ralph and got between him and the entry. He turned quickly. Jack, indefinably by personality and red hair, was advancing from the forest. A hunter crouched on either side. All three were masked in a black and green. Behind them, on the grass, a headless and paunched body of a sow lay where they had been dropping it. Piggy wailed, Ralph, don't leave me. With ludicrous care, he embraced the rock, pressing himself above the sucking sea. The snickering Jack shouted above the noise. You go away, Ralph. You keep to your end. This is my end and my tribe. You leave me alone. You go away. You pinched Piggy's specs, said Ralph breathlessly. You've got to give them back. Got to? Who says? Ralph's temper blazed out. I say! You voted for me for chief. Didn't you hear the conch? You played a dirty trick. We have been giving you fire if you asked for it. The blood was flowing to his cheeks, and the bunged up eye throbbing. You could have had fire whenever you wanted. But you didn't. You came up sneaking up like a thief and stole Piggy's glasses. Say that again? Thief, thief, Piggy screamed. Ralph, mind me. So they go back and forth arguing here about not giving back their glasses and about who's right and who's really the leader. Oh, yes. Then about the fire. I say this again. I've been saying it ever since we dropped in. He held out his spear and pointed at the savages. Your only hope is keeping a signal fire going as long as there's light to see. Then maybe a ship will notice the smoke and come and rescue us and take us home. But without that smoke, we've got to wait till some ship comes up by accident. We might wait years, till we're old. The shivering, silvery, unreal laughter of the savages sprayed out and echoed away. A gust of rage shook Ralph. His voice cracked. Don't you understand? You painted fools. Sam, Eric, Piggy, and me. We aren't enough. We tried to keep the fire going, but we couldn't. And then you played all at hunting. He pointed past them, and there they were, tricked of smoke and disappeared into the pearly air. Look at that. Call that signal fire? That's a cooking fire. Now you'll eat, and then there will be no smoke. Don't you understand? There may be a ship out there. He paused, defeated by the silence and painted anonymity of the group guarding an entry. Jack opened a pink mouth addressed to Sam, who were both between him and the tribe. You two, get back. No one answered him. The twins, puzzled, looked at each other, while Piggy, reassured the session of the voiceless, stood careful. Jack glanced back at Ralph and then back at the twins. Grab them. No one moved. Jack shouted angrily. I said grab them! The painted group moved around Sam nervously and unhandedly. Once more the silvery laughter scattered. Sam protested out the heart of civilization. Oh, I say, honestly, their spears were taken from them. Tie them up, Ralph cried out hopelessly against the black and green mask. Jack, go on, tie them. So then Piggy gets the conch, and it's his turn to speak. I got the conch, he shouted. I tell you, I got the conch. Surprisingly, there was silence now. The tribe was curious to hear what amusing thing he might have to say. Silence and pause, but in the silence a curious air noise close by Ralph's head. He gave it half attention, and there it was again, a faint zip. Someone was throwing stones. Roger was dropping them, his one hand still on the lever. Below him, Ralph was a shock of hair, and Piggy a bag of fat. I got to say to you, you're acting like a crowd of kids. The booing rose and died again as Piggy lifted the white magic shell. Which is better to be which is better, to be a pack of painted Indians like you are, or to be sensible like Ralph is? A great clamor rose among the savages. Piggy shouted again, which is better, to have rules and agree, or to hunt and kill? Again the clamor, and again, zoop! Ralph shouted against the noise. Which is better, law and rescue, or hunting and breaking things up? Now Jack was yelling too. Ralph could no longer make himself heard. Jack had backed right against the tribe, and they were a solid mass of menace, and they bristled with spears. The intention of change was forming among them. They were working up to it. The neck would be swept clear. Ralph stood facing them a little to one side, his spear ready. By him stood Peggy, still holding out the talisman and fragile shining beauty of the shell. The storm of sound beat them in the inclination of hatred. High overhead, Roger, with a sense of delirious abandonment, leaned his weight on the lever. Ralph heard a great rock before he saw it. He was aware of the jolt in the earth that came with him through the soles of his feet, and the breaking sound of stones at the top of the cliff. Then the monstrous red thing bounded across the neck and flung himself flat while the tribe shrieked. The rock struck Piggy in a glancing blow from the chin to the knee. The conch exploded into 1,000 white fragments and ceased to exist. Piggy, saying nothing, with no time for even a grunt, traveled through the air sideways from the rock, turning over, and he went. The rock bounded twice and was lost in the forest. Piggy fell 40 feet and landed on his back across the square of red rock in the sea. His head opened and stuff came out and turned red. Piggy's arms and legs twitched a bit like a pig after it had been killed. The sea breathed again in a long, slow sigh of water and boiled white pink over the rock, and when sucking back again, the body of Piggy was gone.